Hello, friends, and welcome to a golf podcast unlike any other. This is Fairway Rollin' on the Ringer Podcast Network. I am your starter, Joe House. Every week on Fairway Rollin', it is myself and our PGA Tour correspondent on the ground, Nathan Hubbard, talking all things professional golf, amateur betting, professional betting, amateur drinking, professional drinking, my birdie buddies. If you want to hit them straight out there, please check out Fairway Rollin' every week. Available on Spotify.
This episode is brought to you by Anytime Fitness. We may talk a whole lot about sports, but when it comes to keeping fit ourselves, there's definitely room for improvement. I hit this point early July. I was just like, I am not in good enough shape. I started trying to walk at least 15,000 steps a day or hiking or just anything to keep my legs moving. Now it's the end of 2023. I feel great. I had a physical 3 weeks ago and the guy was like, you're doing great. You're doing better than you were 3 years ago. I felt great. Whatever your goals are, progress is possible thanks to Anytime Fitness. Get a personalized plan and support from an expert coach anytime, anywhere. Visit anytimefitness.com to try Anytime Fitness for free. Start to train for your life. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. See website for details.
Welcome back to the Ringers NBA Draft Show. My name is Kevin O'Connor, and joining me, as always, is the Ringers Jay, Kyle, Mann. What's up, man? How are you doing today? We're 1 week plus from the draft. I'm fired up, dude.
Long time coming. Yep. Like I was saying, it feels like a while back. We were in Vegas when we kicked this off. It's always fun to think back about, I don't know, it feels like it flies by, and then you think back about the little iterations of every single show, and you're like, man, we did. I mean, we walked all the way around this class, but it feels weird that it's already here. It feels like it should be here, and it simultaneously is surprising that it went so fast. I don't know. That's just kind of how life goes, I guess. But good to see you. I'm doing fine.
100%, man. That is how life goes. I mean, it all goes fast, and yet, sometimes it feels like it goes slow. But here we are now.
Here we are.
8-9 days away from the NBA draft. I don't know how to count. We are a day removed now from the NBA finals being over, so it is officially draft season here, Kyle. The Nuggets won the NBA finals. Jokic wants to not go to the parade. He wants to fly back to Serbia and ride his horses. He's throwing Jamal Murray in the pool in their post-game celebration. Kevin Durant's tweet was accurate that all Jokic wants to do is ride his horses and go in the pool. The Nuggets won. They did it. They did it with the 41st pick in the draft. And they also, interestingly, Kyle, they made a trade during the finals, which is unusual. We don't see that very often, but them in Oklahoma City linked up and made a trade 5 days ago where the Nuggets sent a 2029 protected first of their own to Oklahoma City. And then they got back the 37th pick in this year's draft, a 2024 first and a 24 second. So they got 3 picks for one distant future first. Oklahoma City's consolidating. They're hoping by that point Jokic is retired, which he very well might retire after this current contract, especially considering how much he talks about wanting to go home. Oklahoma City, it makes sense to kick the can forward. And for the Nuggets, it makes all the sense in the world to go all in now. They now have the 37th pick and the 40th pick in this year's draft class. Kyle, what's the logic behind Denver getting that pick this year?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you have a first round pick, you always have to be thinking in terms of the cycle of what your team's going to be doing and when. And for some teams, that can be as short as 2 or 3 years, as we've seen with like these superstar essential rentals. Like if you're in the LeBron business, your picks can be very, up in the air. It can be very up in the air where you're going to be. But if you have a core that you're wanting to keep together and you seem like you're gearing up for a run the way that Denver does, you got to assume that things are going to be one of the big things, too, is that, like, I know people are kind of passing around the Chris Mannix clip of him talking about the competition that they played. Now, whether or not you want to, like, invalidate their playoff run, I'll leave that kind of to the side. But the reality is that the league will kind of sort of retool and have more on them. They're going to be the focal point as the defending champs. Injuries were a big part of these playoffs. Next year may not look like this year in terms of who they play, so they need to be thinking about this. You can't just kind of sit at 19 and assume that you're going to get, that you're going to run it back and get hit blackjack again and win the title. So their strategy when they were entering this cycle was, I feel like they had talented players that fell to them. That's sort of like the common denominator. I don't know that they're going to be able to do that again at this range. If you think about, they got Murray at 7? That's just off the top. I think it was 7. And then
7, 8, something like that.
Porter was in the late lottery, and then obviously they struck gold with Jokic. I don't know if they're going to do that again. Maybe they will. But if you look at the picks that they got, I guess it just becomes a question of where do you shore up? Where do you expect these players to play in the short term? I don't know. What do you think that they should be thinking in terms of like the types of players that they should be looking for?
Well, I think it's worth considering this. In all likelihood, everybody's back except for possibly Jeff Green, who's an unrestricted free agent, and Bruce Brown has a player option for this following season. He could also re-sign for $7.8 million roughly for next year. And if he takes that deal, it would be less than what other teams could offer. So teams could offer him the full mid-level of exception, which is $12.2 million annually. Other teams with cap space, like a Houston, a San Antonio, maybe they go up to $14, $15 million to really try to double what he could make this year. However, if Bruce Brown takes that $7.8 million with Denver, he said after the game he wants to stay. Money isn't everything. Next year, Denver could sign him to a contract of about $55 to $60 million over 4 years, which if you bring that total out to 5 years, it's about $12.5, $13 million, depending on what the exact numbers are. So he could get essentially the mid-level with Denver if he takes this 1-year deal and then is rewarded next summer. So I think it's safe to assume, based off of his comments and that contractual path, that Bruce Brown has at least over a 50% chance of returning to Denver. So I think all that said, you do need support in case that doesn't happen. So finding a wing, a versatile guy, a connective piece, finding that big forward type who could potentially replace Jeff Green, whether it's this year or whether it's in the years to come, considering his advanced age. I think that needs to be the priority for Denver with that 37th and 40th pick this year. And fortunately, this is a draft class, as we've covered throughout, this entire year, that has a lot of those guys in that range. There are a lot of those connective glue pieces. I mean, first one that comes to mind to me, Kyle, is Andre Jackson Jr. Out of UConn. Yeah. We saw him won the national title, his versatile defense. I mean, like he's a connective passer type. His shot needs to improve, but he can pass. He loves to cut. He has a high IQ. He's somebody who comes to mind for them at 37 or 40. But, I mean, there's a lot of players in that range that would stand out for Denver. Anybody that comes to mind for you?
Some that won't surprise you. I mean, my mind is going towards not necessarily my mind is going towards guys that are sort of more clearer commodities, maybe not necessarily projects, because they're not going to have a ton of time to develop those guys. I know on their roster right now, they took swings on guys and that's something else to consider too, is like, you always have to figure in where's the growth going to come from. Peyton Watson is a guy who, like, in spurts has shown them things, but I mean, defensive mindset is sort of the thing that has sort of simmered to the top. Guys that can guard and can also attack the basket and be switchable. You talked about Bruce Brown. Bruce Brown is a smart basketball player. I mean, you were talking about like approval rating across the league. I mean, it just never fails. Like, if you're talking to somebody about Bruce Brown, without fail, they just light up. People just love the way he plays. I'd be surprised if he left, but I'm looking at guys who might fit with their culture, who might come in and provide a lot of different things. I mean, I really like Jaquez there in terms of the size, in terms of the passing, in terms of the cutting. You think about a guy who could probably just come in right away. Jokic and Jaquez, I just feel like would get along. Like, I just feel like I just see their brains. I had a clip from back when I did the dime drop. We interviewed Rod Strickland, and we were like, "Hey, who's your favorite player you ever played with?" And we were just like waiting on pins and needles what he would say. And he said Arvydas Sabonis. And me and my buddy were like, we were just like, the idea of those two basketball, this maybe won't quite be that, but I mean, I'm just saying, I think if you're trying to vet the types of players that would fit with him, Jaquez makes sense. Another random one I think is Kobe Brown, which is kind of in the similar body type. Switchable, can handle the ball a little bit, can get to the basket. He shot really well from three this past year. Like I said, he's a little older, but I kind of wonder, you mentioned Jackson. I don't know, would they want to add another kind of big forward type who's sort of in the same mold as Gordon? I'm not so sure about that. And then you also kind of consider MPJ maybe expanding a little bit next year. I don't know. But those are the two guys that kind of just jump to mind. I feel like they're going to lean towards fully formed guys rather than projects. What do you think?
I mean, I think with Andre Jackson, that'd be a bit more of a gamble. I mean, like, the shot does need to improve. That's for sure. You'd have to feel good about the way he's shooting the ball in pre-draft workouts for somebody like him. I think he comes to mind more in just that Bruce Brown type of role. But in terms of player construct, in terms of someone who's a quote unquote a bit safer, I'm with you on Jaime Jaquez out of UCLA. I mean, that dude, the passing ability, I just started smiling as you talked about him as the fit with Jokic, like the passing situation with those guys together. The types of reads that Jaquez makes for UCLA this year and throughout his college career, the dude's outstanding. He has such elite feel. His footwork on the post, just be a lot of fun. It'd be a joy to watch the Nuggets even more so. And he can defend. His shooting, like, his numbers have been up and down, but I'm betting on Jaquez to figure it out, man. I'm just pulling up my draft guide profile of him. I wrote in here, comfortable pulling up for mid-range. He's made 41% of dribble jumper twos and 37% of dribble jumper threes in 4 years at UCLA.
He ain't going to be shooting dribble jumper threes. He ain't going to be shooting dribble jumper.
Sure.
So I say, don't worry about it.
But the point of those numbers is like 75% from the line. He's been a solid shooter off the dribble with some high degree of difficulty shots. He can make floaters. He's got touch around the basket. You're betting on him to figure it out as a spot-up three-point shooter, even though he's been only 31% on catch and shoot threes in 4 years at UCLA, according to Synergy. So I think you feel good about that number improving. So Jaquez makes a lot of sense for them in that range. There's guys like Ben Shepherd. You could see him as an option. What if Dariq Whitehead, after his second foot surgery, happened to fall to 37? I think that's too far. I don't think Whitehead goes all the way down to 37. But if he did, maybe they make another bet on an injury guy. Colby Jones out of Xavier, a junior wing, somebody like that. And for Denver, Sidi Sissoko as well. If you want someone more in the Jeff Green type of path to fill that role. For Denver, they have 37 and 40. But this conversation applies to a lot of teams. I mean, there's a bunch of teams that have multiple picks in the 25 to 45 range. The Clippers have 30 and 48. Grizzlies have 25 and 45. Kings have 24 and 38. Blazers 23 and 43. Spurs 33 and 44, so they can add more alongside Wemby. Pacers have 26 and 29 and 32. They'll probably try to consolidate those. The Hornets, there's rumors, we'll talk about this a little later, they could trade the number 2 pick. Well, they also have 27, 34, 39, and 41. Like this year's draft class, I'm not so sure a lot of those guys in the 25 to 45-ish range. I'm not sure a lot of those guys have star upside. They're not necessarily big swings, hoping, this guy could pan out. But there's a lot of good quality role player talent that a Denver or many of those other teams could be able to target in that range. Don't you think? I mean, do you feel the same as me there?
I do, and I think something that Denver has, superstar. I was just kind of looking through the names there, and I was like, if you made me pick one, if you were like, Kyle, I have you over a crocodile pit, and if you don't pick correctly, tell me who the superstar here is, or else in that range, and I had to pick. Amari Bailey flashes some on-ball stuff, but I feel like the on-ball stuff can also be sort of. It can be a little misleading if you just sort of think about players purely as on-ball guys. Everything has to be that way. Because the Nuggets, the thing about them is the fact that Jokic can stretch out and be at the top of the key and sort of orchestrate traffic from up there, they can tweak their lineups. Like if they want to have someone who is a lesser shooter or a cutter, or you just think about like the way their guys play, they can tweak their lineups so that the sort of lesser shooter can be at any spot, whether or not it's, Brown has improved a lot, but that's just sort of a luxury you have when you have somebody like Jokic. So I feel like Jaquez would fit with them, but yeah, I mean, in that range, yeah, there's a lot of guys that I think could sort of bolster something that is already working, but I don't know that there's somebody there that I'm like, oh yeah, this guy's like a definite like upside. I mean, you could look at like Imani Bates if you think he's going to be like a big time on-ball scorer, but we saw what happened with Old Bones Highland. I'm sure I would really love to know what he must have been thinking watching the finals. Like, I don't know. That went through my mind a couple different times thinking about that.
Well, I still think the Bones Highland comp, like the taller Bones Highland comp, which I used in the draft guide for Imani Bates, is true. That the one that you pulled out earlier in the season, that works for Imani Bates. So for Denver,
I was say, did you think of that, or did you swipe that from me, Kev? I was like, you're going to pass that off as your own comp? How dare you?
I mean, no, it's people can listen to the pod.
I got receipts.
It's all connected. It is. We got your video in there as well, your Wemby video. Hopefully your Scoot video soon. I look forward to that later, as well. Yeah. Yes. But no, you're right. Like I think in that range, there's so many different types of players, but for the most part, it's a lot of those quote unquote lack of star upside players, not home run swings this year. Like the Julian Strothers, Jordan Walsh. I could see Jordan Walsh becoming better, like a role player plus, but not like all-star type. Marcus Sasser, I think could be a good rotation guard, but I don't necessarily see him popping and becoming a star. Keontae Johnson out of Kansas State, senior player. Obviously, people might know him as the player who collapsed on the floor years ago when he was playing for Florida due to a heart issue. Away for 2 years, comes back to Kansas State. He's 23 years old and right back on track, healthy, cleared by the NBA. To come back and play after that horrific incident. 6'4", 240 pounds, 7-foot wingspan, can shoot off the catch at 45% as a senior. I mean, that dude, I like Keontae Johnson a lot. I have him, in the 40s on my board. I think that speaks to the depth of role player quality talent that, a Denver's going to be able to choose from at 37 or 40, or that, the Pacers could be able to choose from, the Blazers, the Grizzlies, the Clippers. There's good talent to be had there, man. Most people are focused still on the top of the drafts. And that's where most stars are found. Even though Jokic goes 41 and he's the best player in the world right now, most stars come from the top of the draft or inside the lottery. And that's why there's so much talk this week. Shams Charania from FanDuel TV says that the Pelicans are trying to trade into the top 3 to get Scoot Henderson. Obviously, San Antonio is going to take Victor Wembanyama with the first pick, but Charlotte has number 2, and Portland Trailblazers have number 3. We don't know what those teams are going to do yet. The Pelicans, they're in a position right now. They have the 14th pick this year. They have a bunch of future picks, all of their own. They also have a Lakers first in either 2024 or 2025. They have the choice of which year they get it. They have some Bucks first, a protected first in 2025, an unprotected first in 2027, plus the rights to swap their own first with the Bucks in 24 and 26. So those are years where Giannis Antetokounmpo is still under contract with the Bucks right now. If you're gambling on those picks being high value, you're betting against the Bucks being able to keep Giannis, or you're betting that Giannis experiences an athletic decline by that point and that the Bucks are nowhere near as good as they are now, considering the age of that roster with the supporting cast and the possible variables with Giannis. They have role players, Trey Murphy, Dyson Daniels, Herb Jones. And of course, there's Zion Williamson, who's been busy, and then Brandon Ingram. And neither of those guys.
You got me with that. I was just kind of listening to you in sort of a trance, and I was like, oh, wait a minute.
I'm just listing assets and facts, Kyle.
Okay. All right.
Would you be for the Pelicans? If you're the Pelicans and you're making your best offer to Charlotte at number 2 or Portland for number 3, and you want Scoot Henderson, are you willing to give up Zion or Brandon Ingram? Yes or no? Are you willing to?
Wait, so if I'm the Pelicans and I'm trying to, okay,
you're getting Scoot. You're getting Scoot. Are you willing to give up Zion or Ingram, or are you saying, you know what, screw that? We're only giving you picks and either Murphy, Daniels, Herb Jones, other young players. You're not getting Zion or Ingram. Is that like the line you're drawing?
It's tough because Zion.
It is tough.
It's tough. Zion's future is so, like, personally, how do you go about betting on something like that unless you have like an immense amount of information?
Which they do.
Yes, which they do. I'm just saying for me, I mean, from the outside, I also wanted to say, I don't know who's who runs his PR, like who I assume it's his agent. I think it's kind of strange that like someone who struggles with like staying motivated and staying in shape is constantly in like soda commercials. And I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't understand that one. Every time I see him on there, I'm like, what are we doing? The optics of it. Like, it's just, okay. He may never drink soda for all I know, whatever.
And he's the guy also, remember that Thanksgiving game where they asked him, what's your favorite Thanksgiving dish? He's like, oh, I'm not going to say. People are just going to make fun of me on social media. It's like, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's true. It's just sort of that's more what I mean. I mean, it's more of a just like, if that's the conversation we're avoiding, that feels like they may have signed up for that a long time ago. Whatever. Forget I said it. But yeah, Zion, I mean, my level of confidence right now is not high. My level of confidence in him as a player is like super high. You throw him out there and he's not ready to play, even schematically, if he's not integrated or sort of up to date with like what you're doing, his impact is crazy just because of his rim pressure, because he can score over anybody. But you do start wondering about, even, let's say hypothetically you were super confident about him as a person, there's also just the injury stuff. Like, he's never been healthy. He never stays healthy. So considering that, I think, and then you weigh that against who Scoot is as a player, Scoot with Ingram and Trey Murphy. I mean, like, he is a guy who would be like a culture catalyst. He's a guy who's going to be very steady for you. He's very, astute and dedicated and focused as a player. He's an incredibly hard worker. His upside is high. It'd be worth considering. The other question, though, here is that, like, if I'm one of those teams that has that second or third, I mean, I don't expect him to last. Another interesting thing here, too, Kevin, is like, I don't know how much people have talked about it. You and I texted some, is the fact that the Blazers hired Pooh Jeter, which to me felt like sort of an indicator. What did you think about that?
I think it could mean something. On Beyond the Arc last week, I mentioned how I watched back an interview. Off the top of my head, I think it was the Draft Deeper podcast, if I remember correctly. I just searched Pooh Jeter into YouTube, and that popped up. It was like one of the first 2 things on there, and I went to the transcript, did Control F, look for instances of Scoot.
Is that your hack? Is that how you get through like listening things fast? You just do transcript and skim through?
Yeah, they're incredibly helpful on YouTube. So like I went straight to the points where he talked about Scoot Henderson, and he raved about Scoot. He said, if you don't have Scoot Henderson number 2 on your board, it's wrong. He should be 2 on everybody's board. He's the number 2. And then, I didn't expect this, he pivots and says, and I say that as somebody who's known Brandon Miller a long time. Brandon Miller, we recruited him to the G League Ignite. And I've known this kid and I respect him. We text frequently, right? So Pooh Jeter is somebody, he's saying that from the perspective of somebody who was close with Scoot, played with him. They were teammates last year. And he knows Brandon Miller. So he's saying Scoot's the number 2. He's going to go into that front office with their meetings when they're in their war room and say, it's got to be Scoot. He's our guy. However, he also does really like Brandon Miller. So I offer that as, really not a hard answer. How much should we read into it? I don't know. The Suns had Luke as head coach and they didn't take him.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
And Pooh Jeter is not the head coach. He is, a guy in the organization. A scout.
And he's not going to be on staff for the Blazers. He's going to be, well, I mean, he's not going to be on their like head coaching staff on the main roster, right?
He's going to be like the G League staff and the front office thing. It's like he's like a connective piece. He seems to have like a different type of a unique role. It's not like I'm an assistant coach. He's going to be on the G League staff and in the front office. So at the least, they're going to get all the intel they need about Scoot. To me, with Portland, this is about what path do they want to go. If they want Scoot Henderson, if they get him at number 3, or if they're the team that needs to trade up to 2 to get him, does that mean the end of Damian Lillard, or does that mean the end of Anthony Simons and they go with Dame and Scoot? To me, I think if you're building with Scoot Henderson and Damian Lillard, that the time's going to run out on Dame in the next year or two before Scoot Henderson, you hope, is ready to take the reins and be the guy there. You can't win with those two guys together at the highest of levels. It doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't make sense to me either. But I'm also looking at this, if you flip it from the other perspective, you're thinking about, okay, would New Orleans do it? Let's say they're really eager to move Zion and they secretly are just like, we're on for this. If I'm the Hornets and I'm looking at this and I'm like, I could bring in Zion, I've heard people talk about like, okay, it's moving him closer to home. People always talk about that with players where they're like, oh, yeah, coming closer to home. There's a lot of stuff that comes with coming closer to home. Yep. Sometimes it's better to be far from home. And we're talking about a guy who has had people openly question the people around him. I don't know the specifics about who's around him, but people ask those questions and we're like, okay, we want to move this guy closer to home, closer to the people in his life that people are asking all these questions about. If I'm the Hornets, I'm like, okay, I have the opportunity to bolster this core that already has been kind of like, we've talked about it, they've fizzled. Maybe they don't have as much talent as the teams in the league, but there are little things kind of clicking into place. LaMelo gets healthy. Do we want to bring in Zion? That feels like a huge gamble for me whenever I look at Scoot hasn't had a lot of injury history. Scoot doesn't have the same issues personally. We know that he's going to be steady. Maybe his high points are as high as Zion. I would just feel some queasiness about that, making that move. Or Portland, same kind of thing. What do you think across the league the eagerness will be to trade for Zion based on what we've seen? Or is it an Embiid situation where he's going to course correct and become, an MVP later in his career? It just does not feel it doesn't feel as certain to me for Zion. It's way, way, way more questionable.
Well, I mean, the difference between Embiid and Zion is there was never a question about Embiid's work ethic, ever. I mean, he was a worker since college. There was never a question about it. Even when he was hurt out those first 2 years with the Sixers, I think, there was a confidence in hey, this guy has a desire to be great. Even if there's still some issues, some youth, he needs to improve his conditioning, blah, 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 this and that. With Zion, it's the opposite. So I think in that sense, it's different. However, we've also seen a taste of Zion Williamson being an absolute dominant force in the early stage of his career, where, like you said, anytime he's on the floor, that dude is awesome. Shaq-like efficient finisher at the basket, a playmaker, and got better on defense in his 29-ish games this year for the Pelicans, too.
You mentioned Shaq. I mean, that's if we're just looking historically. Now, granted, Shaq had a lot of luxuries physically to fall back on, but he's somebody that went through his entire career like that. He would come he would come to training camp and they'd be like, all right, I guess Shaq's going to get in shape by March or something. I guess it's a different situation. I guess all of this is just kind of a part of the discussion. Can a player at his level, we saw it with Jokic. Jokic increasingly got, in better shape as his career went along, got more serious. Hopefully Luka will do the same. Those are the conversations you got to have if you're talking about altering your future. But if I'm Charlotte, I think I stand pat. I think I would stay put where I am and just say, and maybe Portland really does want Scoot. And I don't think either one of these teams can lose either way with Miller or Scoot, assuming those are your top, 2 past Wemby. I would stay put. I just don't feel like I would be tempted to do it. I don't know. That's kind of where I'm sitting.
Let me just offer this one thought here, Kyle. How would you react if this deal happens on draft night? The Hornets trade the number 2 pick to the Pelicans for number 14, that unprotected Lakers first in 24 or 2025, the unprotected Bucks first in 2027. They get the best of the swaps in 24 and 26, and they get Trey Murphy. So they don't get Zion, they don't get Ingram, but they get Trey Murphy and a bunch of firsts in the future. Maybe you throw on another New Orleans first as well in the distant future, and they kick the can forward and they pass on Scoot and Miller for Murphy and a bunch of picks. Are you saying that this is a bad move, or are you saying, you know what? Maybe now they get multiple multiple rolls of the dice in some draft classes with, Cooper Flag, Boozer. There's a lot of good guys coming, that could be franchise changers in the coming years.
You're going to continue to be bad enough, and I feel like to have a chance to get those guys. And you're talking about kicking the can. How hard are we kicking it? That kind of feels like
pretty hard.
Kind of like in limp contact with the can to me. I'm like,
pretty
this
hard.
is kind of let's just sort of brush
How
it
do you
against
react?
the ground.
You're saying that's a mistake. You're saying that's
I don't
a
like
mistake.
it. No,
Okay.
I kind of, and maybe I'm revealing some of my feelings that I've kind of come around to with Scoot. Eyebrow raise. I just kind of. That's
tell
one
me
of the big
about it,
things.
Kyle. Spoil your video.
I'll spoil it a
You're
little bit. I
concerned.
like him personally. That's what I would say. I like him.
He's
personally.
he's a nice guy.
I know. I kind of just have this feeling like we're talking about all the kind of like demons, or like demons is a strong word. We're talking about all the kind of variables that. No, we're not talking about nothing like serious, but we're just talking about as basketball concerned. Scoot is just rock solid with upside that is the bridge to his upside is navigable because of who he is as a person. And if I were like looking at like in the future, do we want to continue? Not that Charlotte is averse to continuing being bad. We've seen their track record with that in the past. Let me checks watch forever. Maybe they have the stomach to do that, and they see those picks and they think, let's continue to do that. But I think if you weigh that against the bird in the hand here, which is Scoot, who you're going to have at the second pick, I would just stay with it. Like, I don't know, maybe just Trey Murphy's superstar upside movie at all on that one. He's going to continue to get better. I know we both like him, but I just feel like you run the risk of getting those guys, especially with the way the draft lottery has changed in recent years. It's less of a certainty than ever. Like, I don't feel good about it, man. I think you stay put. Charlotte, don't fuck around, man. Stay put. I don't know.
I look forward to seeing if there's actually ends up being like a bidding war type of thing, because we have the Magic with 6 and 11, the Indiana with their collection of picks after number 7. Those are two teams I would expect to try and trade up. You could have the Wizards or the Raptors, teams like that. The Raptors just hired Darko Rajakovic, who Chris Vernon was talking about as more of a developmental coach. Could they try to throw out a Pascal Siakam to Portland if Portland does try to keep the Dame path and try to keep winning? There could be a number of teams that try to trade up there. And for Charlotte or Portland, those teams back to back, we talk about information, on the New Orleans side of things with the value of Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram, the health with his health and all that. The flip side of that is the Charlotte Hornets know more about Scoot Henderson than all of those other teams, having him in for an interview, being able to get hands-on with him, put him through any number of tests they want, and same with Portland. They have more information. So if they know something that other teams don't know, or they have some concerns, or they just it might have nothing to do with Scoot. It might just only have to do with, hey, this is the path we want to go. And we don't want to add another guy to LaMelo Ball. We don't think it's a great fit. We want an established player. It might just be about that. But those teams have more information too. So just something to think about. I mean, we're a week away from the draft. I would expect this won't be the last of the rumors. It's possible even by the time you hear this recording, there's more that drops Wednesday morning. We're recording this on Tuesday afternoon Eastern. More could come out.
I just want to reiterate, I think it's an awesome fit. Like the LaMelo Scoot thing. I think personally, I think on court, I think personally it is huge. Like I just think LaMelo doesn't want to out there be like the guy ordering people around. I think it would juxtapose LaMelo in a way that would be more comfortable for him. I really do. That's part of my argument here with the Charlotte thing. You let LaMelo be who he is, and Scoot comes in and is like the culture catalyst, like I said. That's what you need to do if you're Charlotte. You need to establish that. Like, that's what they've lacked for so long. So, I'm not going to try to beat a dead horse here, but I just, I feel pretty strongly about them staying put, personally.
Well, Kyle, I know we are a week away from the draft. There is a non-draft topic that you wanted to discuss, so I'll just leave the floor to you.
Yeah, I just, I kind of had a conversation, and I've talked with some of our other Ringer people about this. Obviously, it's kind of a personal thing with my family. My mom has been sick for a while. She got diagnosed with cancer gosh, it's probably been 4 years ago. It was like right when I started with the Ringer. It's been going on for a while. She has beaten the odds for a long time. She is tough and resilient and perseverant. And this past week, she had an issue. So I guess the main reason I'm bringing it up is, I don't know. You never know how much detail or how little detail to go into with it, but we are just kind of trying to be with her because it's very serious. And just trying to help her have as much quality time and quality of high quality of life as possible. So I kind of wanted to make people aware. We're in a limbo here where the draft is coming up very, very soon, and I just kind of don't know. I just wanted to make people ready or aware if I just kind of am not around as much, or if something happens and I'm not as visible, or if I'm not able to kind of come on, and just if I just disappear. I just wanted people to kind of know what was going on there. So, just been spending a lot of time with my mom and trying to, help her enjoy whatever time she has. So that's where we are right now. So I don't really know. I don't know. I never know how to say. I'm a pretty open person, like we talked about. We went through this with John last year. But it's people are welcome to reach out and talk to me about it. But whatever faith or walk of life you're on, just send prayers up for her, just to help her just be comfortable. And that's kind of where we are right now.
Thank you for talking about it, Kyle. I think you never know what people are going through, right? And this has been something that's been part of your situation as long as that I've known you. Like you said, it was around when you first got hired by the Ringer that she was diagnosed. And obviously, I lost my dad to cancer in 2020 after he was diagnosed in 2019. It sucks, man. Cancer blows. We lost charge to it last year. It's amazing how many people are affected by it, either directly or a loved one, whether it's a friend or a family member. It is like a just shocking amount of people. Unfortunately, there's a lot of listeners right now who can relate to it.
I'm sure.
I mean, how are you doing with it right now? How's your family doing with it? How are you doing, Kyle?
You and I have talked about this, where it's like when someone is sick for a long time, you kind of, there's a difference between something suddenly happening and you're blindsided by it. And it's like when it happens slowly over time, when someone's battling something like this, she beat the initial diagnosis and then it came back. And that was when it just kind of entered a different game for us. So we had to kind of start just looking at what it was going to look like. And she's fought it for a long time, man. The hardest thing is just that she and my dad have been taking a lot of trips and just enjoying themselves. Like they love to go to Key West. That's one of their things. They're always sending me pictures, and I'm always teasing them. I'm like, enjoy yourself in touristy, tacky Key West. But I'm extremely hipster compared to my parents. My dad's just like, I like Olive Garden. I don't really care. But that's the bougie back and forth we always have. But like she was coming back, they were coming back, and one of the things about cancer is that it makes I learned this word. It makes your blood hypercoagulative, so her blood is just thicker, and it's always prone to like blood clots and things like that. And she had a massive stroke last week, and that was one of the things that really complicated it. So it's like when you're trying to wrestle the grizzly bear of cancer, and it's just like another grizzly bear enters the ring and just sort of lays down on you, puts you in a headlock. So that's kind of what my mom's going through right now. She's there, and I've been talking to her and spending as much time with her as I can. Sorry. So yeah, that's kind of where we are. And I just haven't had as much basketball coming into my brain as normal. Like I said, like I was in the heat of working and editing something, and this is obviously a very worthy disruption to that, and puts things in perspective. But my encouragement to people is just spend time with your parents. Don't take them for granted. So that's what's going on with me, Kev. Yeah,
it's the truth. You can't take it for granted. You got to enjoy the days you have with the loved ones that you have, and always try to make the best of those days. I mean, I think with my parents, like we always try to say love you and good night to each other in a happy way before going to bed. Try not to go to try not to go to bed angry at each other.
That's true. It's very true.
You know, it's just like little things like that. Yeah, I mean, it's nice. It makes me happy. Put a smile on my face to know that your parents have done a lot of fun stuff together going to Key West. Because when I was back and forth between LA and Massachusetts the year my dad was doing chemo, it always made me happy to get selfies from my parents. If they went, I remember they went to this like little Halloween thing with like, these, ghosts and whatnot. And they took fun selfies in front of that and going on walks together and, seeing my mom's cousin who she was close with. Yeah, I mean, it's just pretty, it's nice. It's nice seeing that they've enjoyed their life. That makes me happy to know that,
Oh yeah. My dad hasn't stopped holding my mom's hand, which is very sweet. And
beautiful.
Yeah, and they've been together, 40 plus years now.
Wow.
Yeah, it's fun. She's, they're always coming in to kind of test and see how she's doing. And, you're always they're testing her sides of her body to see how they're doing and see how her progress is going. But it's been hilarious because she's just kind of a quip machine. And like, she's been sort of like really empowered to have like the whole room listening to her. So like during some of her examinations, she's just been kind of getting off some of her material. Like the doctor was like holding something up and she was like, she just is very like, doesn't like medication, doesn't like hospitals naturally, but she always, the doctor was like, what is this? And she was like, torture. She just, is like roasting the doctors.
Yeah.
And we're all like putting our hands on our brows and just kind of like, oh my God. Like she's just kind of, you never know what she's going to say. She's that type of funny person, but
that's who you got her from. You inherited the quickness.
I don't know, man. You never know where things come from. But she'll roast you. I was teasing her because she and I have had a ribbing relationship forever, and I was like, I was joking, and I was like, I feel like everybody's gotten roasted, but me, Mom. I was like, I'm the only one that hasn't gotten a jab. That's weird. And she reached over and jabbed me with her arm, which was hilarious. That was hilarious. So she's been on in that sense for sure.
Are you heading over to see her today?
Yeah, she said she wanted some miso soup, so I'm gonna be my mom's DoorDash here for a little bit. Yeah, that'll be
amazing. Well, Kyle, go enjoy that miso soup with your mom today. Enjoy the time with your family, dude.
I will. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Ringers NBA Draft Show. Thank you to Jessie Lopez for producing. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we get the drafts in 1 week from now.